as you know, the Clutch Burners podcast, this is your home for stick shift drag racing, stick shift tech, and more. And look who's down there getting ready to leave for sick week. My co-host, Rich Guido, the Canadian Chuck Norris.
Yeah, leave tomorrow just for 3,000 miles in a 1,500 horsepower car. Should be fun. And that other guy is
so cool.
Bill Armstrong, and he's wearing a real nice shirt tonight too. Look at that.
Yes, little G-Force gear, that's for sure. And Rich, who do we have the pleasure of talking to tonight? Well, you know what? I'm just going to introduce him. How about that? Tonight we have a guy who can not only win the stick shift elite class in real life at TX2K, but he can also do pretty well in the internet popularity contest. Myles Kerr. Welcome to the podcast, guys? Myles.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is honestly this style of podcast is definitely the first I've ever done, so I'm kind of intrigued with it. So
you must be famous. You probably done. Have you been on Joe Rogan and I just missed that one?
No. Have not been on Joe Rogan. Definitely not that famous. Like by far, not even close.
That's awesome. Well, what are we looking at behind you? What do you got there?
Yeah, so this is my garage. A little quick insight about me. I manage a shop called English Racing, and I live really close to the shop itself. And the last year and a half, I've actually done like all the work I can to this car, including like rebuilding the motor, transmission, like everything happens like in my garage next to my house. So, this is a 1994 Acura Integra that's all-wheel drive.
Nice. Does that mean it has like a CRV transfer case in it?
So I actually daily drive a 99 CRV, funny enough. And
my daughter has one of those. We just worked on it today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so it has some parts of that transmission. The transfer case, the base is the transfer case, and it has like, actually, for example, we'll get some broken transmission parts that,
what?
Yeah,
wait, the stick guy has broken transmission parts laying around?
Exactly. So transfer case itself has these little hypoid gears in it, right? So this goes to the tail shaft.
Those ones are cute.
Yeah, these are really small because I don't have big hands and it barely fit, and it fits in there real easy. So it's a pretty, they're small parts. Let's just say that much. And, I've actually killed, these are aftermarket ones. They're made by PPG out of Australia, and I've broken 2 of them so far. But the biggest problem that seems to happen to me is actually this bearing right here has failed twice now. And when that bearing fails, everything gets a little oblong. And the first time it failed, I was like, okay, I got to check it at this many times. And now I've broken 2 of them. And it's really come down to a maintenance item. And now I know how many times that after 15 or 20 passes, it needs to be looked at. And then once I look at it, then I decide, all right, do I just replace the bearing or what needs to get done? So, I haven't actually been racing this car in terms of drag racing it I guess this will be going on the 2nd full year. But last year, 23, I hit it probably the hardest I ever had. So I really learned quick what breaks and what doesn't. And transmission and transfer case parts have been the 2 biggest things for me.
And I'm guessing those are pretty. They do like a buy one get one. You order like a 6-pack of those.
Yeah, I wish. So like these 2 are like $2,100, and then you have to have someone like I send them to my buddy. He rebuilds them. You have a billet transfer case with it too, which I don't have that in here right now because it broke just recently, so it's not in here. Actually, it's somewhere around here. Now that I think about it, where is that thing? Yeah, so that billet transfer case, billet gears, billet bell housing itself, a company called Speed Factory Racing. You guys probably know who they are. They've got the only 6-second, stick Civic as of right now. So
wow.
They build the bell housing, so it could bolt right into a stock CRV. Actually, the bell housing would, and then it's just got PPG 4-speed transmission inside, and a clutch and a valve for the clutch, and it's kind of like a lot of the front wheel drive Hondas out there, except I just kept it all wheel drive. I made it all wheel drive because all the roll racing and the half-mile stuff I started doing initially, you can only put so much down on a small tire and a front-wheel drive car. So you kind of get limited. And so here I am. I was like, what's it going to take to make the car all-wheel drive? And they had finally had the recipe, and so I bought it, and now I'm just maintaining all the broken parts.
So
I love it. I love it.
Why don't we back up a bit? How long have you owned this car?
I bought this car in 06, 100% stock to the T, everything. So
Daily driver?
It was a daily driver up until probably 2011 or something like that, maybe, I think sometime around there. So it was a daily driver I put 100,000 miles on it. So it was a daily driver for quite a while. Yeah. And it wasn't, I put a turbo on it in sometime in 2008, I think. The car got stolen from the local mall, which, in that 07 to 2010 range, Hondas were the most stolen thing ever. And I walked into the mall, funny enough, to get some jeans cut, and came out, and the car was gone. And 2 days later, I got a phone call from the cops. They asked, hey, we found your car. And the first thing I said, in how many pieces? And they're like, no, it's not drivable. I'm like, well, doesn't really tell me a whole lot still. And so I ended up getting out of the tow yard, and it's like they started tearing the front of the car apart, but never finished or stopped in the process of it for whatever reason. And I got the car back a couple days later. I sent it up to the shop that I work at now, and they put the thing back together, and I got $500 more than I paid for the car back then from insurance. Bought the car back for $243, bought a turbo kit, and that was the start of it.
Nice. I love that story.
Retirement 85 coming at you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So educate us a little bit. It's an Acura, but it's really a Honda drivetrain. So
Is
Acura do you have a K series? That's about the extent.
No.
I know if you want to go fast, you have a K motor in it, right?
Oh, those are fighting words for a lot of people right there.
Oh my
Not me. We could argue that, but the fastest is still a B-Series at the moment, both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. So,
okay.
The B-Series motor, it's been around since the late 80s, early 90s, essentially. And this is the original style motor that came in this car. So this is a true GSR chassis. So it came with a 1.8 liter VTEC engine. And, I thought about switching to K-Series because everything K-Series is much easier when it comes to all-wheel drive. The same factory transmission case, all the PPG gears go into that, and there's a lot of K-Series out there. The B-Series, parts for this car are getting harder to find. People are starting to make billet parts and everything, but it definitely gets down to this. It's hard to find the stuff these days, and I would say the K-Series, there's a lot of easier stuff for sure.
So B-Series doesn't stand for billet automatically, right?
No, it doesn't. No. I mean, you could say B stands for better, K stands for killer. There's a lot of things they say, but
all right.
I do have a billet motor I'm assembling right now for this one because this is technically on a stock cask block still. And it's made, I put on the dyno 2 months ago, and it broke the transfer case in the process of it. So that's what this one's from. And it made 1498 and 998 foot-pounds at 8,100 RPMs. So, and it was like a 45-degree angle going up when it broke. So, my assumption was it'd make somewhere in the 1,600 range to the wheels, and that was all-wheel drive too.
Okay. Wow. So how big? It's a 1.8 liter motor.
It's a 1.93, 84 millimeter bore and 87 millimeter stroke. So pretty small motor in the grand scheme of it.
I got to get my calculator out here. So 1,600 tire. So let's say that, what do we figure? 150 to drive the transmission, maybe?
Well, all-wheel drive is going to be a little more. It might even be 250 and an all-wheel drive. I don't know.
So that means it's making 1,800 horsepower at the crank.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a realistic. I mean, the car's trapped 195 at 2,700 pounds. So Yeah.
That's 450 horsepower a hole. Dude,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
impressive as hell. So let's see.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
if my car was doing that, I'd only be making 3,600 horsepower to crank.
When you start going off of either displacement or the size of the cylinders, like, you know, the small motor Hondas or small motor import motors do really well. They just don't stay together as well, as we know.
Yeah. So how much boost is that?
It made almost 80 pounds when it made that power. Almost.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane. I'm like, maybe I should push mine to 20.
Yeah, but you drove yours 3,000 miles, so like you got to get it there. So you run a couple more pounds, like that might be the difference of make or break a car like yours. So
Getting it home is even more important.
you'll get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That takes some crazy dedication. I admire that, and one of my goals I think this year is to start a drag and drive for the car. To be honest, so
No, right on.
That's impressive, Myles.
Yeah, back to your motor. So it's a stock cast block, and
yeah. So I'll do a quick rundown. Stock cast block 1.8 liter B18C1, which is a GSR engine, and it has Darton sleeves, BME aluminum rods and pistons, which look just like this, little guys.
It's so cute.
It's cute and small, exactly, like, you know, not a whole lot in terms of size. And I have a custom head gasket combo that it's a fire ring, but it has 9 individual cylinder head dowels. So my friend, a friend from Extreme Turbo Systems, his name's Ken. He did this for their GTRs, and I actually used to struggle about 1,400 horse on the stock block and start pushing water out. I did the fire ring. It didn't do anything because this is still a full wet block. So it doesn't have solid block. It's full wet block still. And so every single cylinder has a head stud in it, obviously, and then a 2-inch dowel. And the 2-inch dowel are like a 1 thou press. So when you're pulling the head off, you're hammering the head up and down to get this thing off. And that actually gave me, I feel like, a ton more force to keep the head on there. And I will say, when I made that 1600 or the 15, right at 1500 wheel, it pushed more water than it ever had, but that's the most power I've ever made with it too. And I did like 4 back-to-back pulls. So, you know, you build a lot of heat, the pressure builds up more. We could say that maybe it was that, but I know that it's like on the edge, because most people at this level, which there really aren't that many, there's, you know, under 10 probably that have been at this level, they switch to a billet block because the stock block, I mean, it just moves around. There's a lot of movement, and that's what I felt like is always going on. So I felt like the sleeves move, everything just moves, and if the head and the block are clamped together best they could, the ability to everything move around would be much less. So, so I did that. It still runs a factory style camshaft, so it still idles on the non-VTEC side. And it then, so, you know, those who know, basically it's 3 rockers. The 2 rockers are always running. And then at X amount of pressure, or not pressure, but RPM, there's a little shaft that locks all 3 rockers together, and you go to like a big single cam. So in layman's easiest terms. So you go from a small cam to a big cam with just the switch of a solenoid essentially. And it has all GSC Power Vision valve train, valve springs, cams, 4-piston ported head, and as far as an engine, that's basically it. It's stock crankshaft. So nothing crazy, you know.
I am amazed that the block itself will stay together at that power level. I like we've seen pictures of was it Jamie or Brent?
Jamie,
or,
yeah.
Oh my God,
his car,
the whole thing came apart.
I remember watching that, and I remember listening to him say like the electronic wastegate or something messed up. So the car went like 80 pounds boost in the burnout box on a limiter. And it looked like to me, it like blew a head gasket right then. And then when the head gasket blew, it just went, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
impressive.
crazy. Yeah. So
Honda
yeah,
good stuff, apparently.
Honestly, they do really good. Like Honda did pretty damn good for what they are. They still do really good. These days, some of the newer motors, you could argue that, they're definitely more efficient in some ways. But, the interesting part is when the K series and the B series race in the same series, they all have the same turbo rules and everything. They have the same turbo rules and they can all run the same kind of transmissions. But the B series cars are still at the front, so you could argue that in the turbo world, the B series are better, and in all motor world, the K series definitely better. Yeah.
So let's talk about it's a stick shift. So let's talk about the clutch program, because I'm not super educated on the import scene, but my understanding is you guys don't have the option to run a slipper clutch or an adjustable clutch. So what do you do?
Yeah, at this level, we don't. Obviously, the rear-wheel drive engine cars that are chassis cars and fast with import motors, they can run a slipper style clutch. I just run a clutch tamer, it's called, and you probably know what it is. And so I run that. I put that in like 3 years ago. I raced another car for the shop. This is my personal car, but I've raced an Evo 10 for the shop. That car's a lot more difficult because it's a true all-wheel drive car with a center differential, when this is direct drive with a viscous. So I can blow off the front tires on this car, no problem. But the Evo, when it spins, the center diff's like, oh, we're going to do something here. So then it actually has a 2-to-1 multiplication. So you can spin a front tire 120 miles an hour, even though it should physically not be able to do that in this first gear. Yeah. And so they require a lot more clutch stuff. But yeah, I just run a clutch tamer. I activate it off of a button, so I can turn it on or off if I want it on my keypad. And it's X amount of pressure. I've learned what's good for slip, what's not, how it holds. And I hold it for usually a mile an hour. And then I have a race time limiter in first gear.
So you're using if I'm not mistaken, it's the Hitmaster one with the solenoid?
It's the Hitmaster, correct, yes. The solenoid with a line lock, essentially. Yeah, it's like a 2-stage, he calls it, yeah.
Yep. I'm familiar with that. I've heard really good things about them. So
it works.
I'm not experienced with it, but
there's not a lot out there for us. I just run a standard diaphragm triple disc clutch, and I actually run the factory clutch fork and everything with mine. A lot of people switch to the Tilton style. I just kind of kept everything how the car was, and I've gotten to the point where I can go out and on different surfaces with different tires, because I've got 3 different kinds of tires: slicks, a hard tire, and a bias ply radial, not a radial, but a bias ply non-slick. And I've raced that multiple different surfaces, so I've kind of learned where the car's happy at what time, and how much slip makes the car fast on a good track, etc. So yeah, I've learned a lot.
Is it an external slave then, if you're using a clutch fork?
Yes, it has an external slave that bolts right to the transmission itself. Factory piece also.
So the throwout bearing itself is mechanical on the clutch fork, and then the slave is modulating. Okay.
Yeah, which I've got some pieces over there if we wanted to see it, but yeah, essentially, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the style. I just is that what those cars came with back?
That's exactly what they came with factory. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Talk about the clutch itself. Imagine it's double, maybe even triple disc centered iron. It's got to be something aggressive to hold power.
Yep. It's just a competition clutch, stage 3, off the shelf. I've got to be right at the limit. It's just triple ceramic, cerametallic. Yeah, nothing super crazy.
Not even
7 1/4. Yeah, 7 1/4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
How much pressure on the pressure plate? Do you know?
I don't know what their actual pressures are. That's a good question. I wish I probably knew that. I just know what my pressure is when I press the clutch in. But that also varies if you have the clutch fork and if you have the Tilton style. So when I went to this one, actually, the line lock, the valve that they send with wouldn't hold the pressure my car runs at. So I actually dude, I spent a week bleeding this thing, changing, going through all these different things to then find out that I had a combo that everyone who was who I talked about has never had. So then I had to do a different style line lock that'll hold 2,000 pounds of pressure, and everything worked great. So yeah,
What
learned the
kind
hard way.
what kind of clutch pressure do you see when you push it in? So it sounds like you're monitoring.
About 1320 is peak, and it varies if you rev the engine up and do you pump it. Sometimes you pump it back to back, you'll get a little more, but if you just stab it and push all the way down, it's like 1350, 1380 is about the most I see.
God, that's got to be a hell of a pressure plate. Because I'm like, I have a test bench. I don't know. I have a digital clutch control device that we sell as well. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but on the test bench, I have a what is it? A McLeod Original Street Twin. So it's a 10.5-inch disc. Dude, I only see 300 pounds of pressure on the test bench.
Yeah.
And that's like a 1,800 pound pressure plate. So you must be, geez, what do you think, Rich? 2,000? It's got to be way up there.
Yeah.
I'd say probably somewhere in the 2,500 to 2,000 range would be my guess. It's interesting. Like we have the same clutch valve, the tamer on our other cars, our Evos, and they're actually an 8.25, I believe, clutch size, and they see a maximum like 7, maybe 800. And
interesting.
But we kind of talk about how like we're currently in the issue of slipping the clutches in those cars now. And I haven't had the problem yet. So we're like, well, maybe this clutch will work for those cars too. And like, it's a pretty cheap clutch for what it is, to be honest, a triple disc under $2,000 that drives pretty decent and holds what it is. It's kind of hard to beat,
That's impressive. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What kind of safety flips do you run?
So the best I've been so far is like a 128. One thing about this car that's not normal is I run all four wheels and tires are the exact same size. Most of all the other Hondas run like a 13-inch in the front on like maybe a 10-inch wide wheel with a 13 by 24.5 by 9 or 9.5. I actually run 15 by 24.5 by 8s all around because I don't have a wide front end on this car. It has all stock body panels still. So I've gone the direction of I want to be able to just bolt on whatever tires and wheels, not have to raise the car, lower the car, change anything, and go race however I want. So that's the best I've gotten. I do feel like there's a little more. The World Cup finals, I had to drop turbo size from a 80 mil that I've been running to a 73, and I had to add about 80 pounds. And I went consistently. I went a 129 and 130 3 times there, and I learned a little there. So I'm feeling pretty good about this year and what my dreams are, my goals, and hopefully in the mid 120s would be awesome. But anywhere in the 120s or 130, I'll be pretty happy.
What does that car weigh with you in it?
Yeah, so for World Cup I had to be 2770, and when I trapped 195, it was 2680 with the 8085 on it. I'm hoping this year to start off it'll be 2,600 pounds with me in it. So not quite as heavy as your guys' cars.
Well, we have 4 more cylinders than you.
You got 4 more cylinders and lots of big steel body panels too.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's just,
true.
It's just super cool what you guys do with 4 cylinders. So describe your burnout in your car. Can you switch? No burnout.
I wish that would be awesome, but I can't now.
You say you can't do
it. You could do a mechanical disconnect, but then getting it to reconnect again is kind of a little difficult. But yeah, I don't do a burnout at all, actually. I just roll around the water box and pull up to the line. Nothing.
And go 770s.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah.
It's definitely fun.
Clutchless shifting, do you use a strain gauge or?
Strain gauge, yeah, strain gauge. It's probably one of the most fun things about a car, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the strain gauge shifting is, you're just like, da, da, da. I love it, yeah. Strain gauge dog box.
That's awesome.
Still H pattern, right?
It is H pattern, and they make lockout shifters and stuff. I don't actually have a lockout shifter or any lockouts at all. So I'm definitely playing with fire every time I race this car.
Have you money shifted it?
Knock on wood, not yet.
Nice.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
What kind
You're
of
gonna
question
ruin it now for me. What kind of question was that? That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I've definitely screwed stuff up, but that's one of the things I've been fortunate not to. Like the Evo 10 that I raced for the shop, it's actually a 5-speed H pattern, so I shipped fifth down the track right about the eighth. And that
Wow.
car's been 776 at 189, and it's more of a challenge to drive than this car, like by far. It's more fun to drive. This car is a much better race car side by side, and actually being able to cut a light, and also it's my personal car, so there's a lot of love in this one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And
Also, yep.
oh, I was gonna. So, you've been using the strain gauge for quite a while.
Yeah, I've been using the strain gauge for probably 5 years now, because it's been all-wheel drive. This will be the start of this will be the third year, and I've had a strain gauge on the car for probably 5 or 6 years. Yeah.
It was interesting talking to Jamie and Brent from PFI, and so I use a shift cut knob, so it's just got
Yep.
micro switches in it. But definitely the advantage of the strain gauge is telling you how hard you're trying to rip the shifter out of the transmission. But
There's, if I had a gear position sensor, it would actually, instead of a gear estimate, the ECU uses gear estimate right now. So if I had a gear position sensor, I could probably have some faster shifts because it would know exactly when it's in gear. So then the ECU can apply the power sooner. Right now, it's just the time based. So that would be the dream one of these days.
yeah,
And what kind of ECU do you run in that setup?
Yeah, actually, this car is on a Motec M150 and a John Reed Racing B-Series Honda package.
very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like
Motec is pretty awesome.
It really is. All of our race cars are on Motec M1. This car's been on a Motec M1 since 2016. When I was still driving the car a lot on the street, like, every weekend I would drive it. I still drive, as weird as it sounds, like I still drive this car more than anyone that has a Honda at this level. I drive it a lot. It's got full interior right now. It's got all door panels, all factory stuff. So, it's missing AC and a heater. That's what it really needs.
It's impressive.
Well, one thing I love that you said is you've got it set up with the same size tire all the way around, which truly is ideal for a drag and drive.
Well, I'm not joking when I said it's going to happen. So I've got a radiator combination that I've got because we build cars for a living at the shop I work at. So, I know if I drive this car for more than about 35 minutes, 40 minutes on an 85-degree day, it just struggles to stay cool. So I had PWR make me literally this radiator it's over here. It's huge. 2 brushless fans. So that's actually going to go somewhere in the back of the car underneath, and I'm going to duct it out the rear bumper is the plan. We'll see if I've got room for it, and oil coolers, and still figuring out what I'm going to do for the fuel system because I run methanol all the time. And I get 14, 15 miles to the gallon on methanol, but driving a car on methanol for that long, I feel like it's going to be hard to get methanol.
Yeah.
What are your concerns too with, I don't run methanol, but it seems like if you're running that much fuel through the motor, just driving it down the road, that you're just going to wear stuff out and dilute the oil and everything else.
So the oil definitely doesn't dilute. Oil temperature plays a big factor in that. If I fire this car up when it's dead cold and let it run for 5 minutes and I look at the oil, it's all nasty and milky, right? And that's just inherently how methanol, that's what happens. But if you let it sit for, let's say, 25 or 30 minutes idling, and the oil temperature gets above 150, 160, and it starts going up and kind of hangs out there, everything in there burns off, and it looks brand new. Oh. So I will say that the wearing out the cylinders is probably a real thing because I've rebuilt the motor the beginning of last year about this time, right before Texas, and the cylinder walls were completely worn out. There was almost no crosshatch, none of that left. So that's definitely something that is an issue. I would say if you put enough miles on it, and I might have put 1,500, 2,000 miles on the car in a year, and that's probably about what I put on through it. So I would say that that is a problem, and I'm still up in the air on what I'm going to do. The way my fuel system is set up on this car, it wouldn't be difficult for me to add 4 more injectors and run pump gas on 4 injectors and have 8 injectors on methanol. There's a couple of ways I've thought about doing it because at the power I want it to make, I don't trust the car on ethanol. 70, 80 pounds of boost on ethanol, not a good idea, right? So it runs a surge tank right now with a mechanical pump feeding it off the distributor where the distributor would be. And I could turn that 2.5 gallon surge tank into a true standalone tank, keep the methanol and everything situated there. Then the rear tank that I have in the car, which is 5.5 gallons and a single primer pump, I could make that the pump gas side. So I could have a dual fuel system car at all times. That's just going to add more complexity and more stuff to the car. So haven't quite decided what I'm going to do for the drag and drive stuff, but I've got about 6 months to really think about it hard.
Well, some people have had pretty good luck with that dual fuel stuff. In fact, the guy that beat you in the voting thing, Garrett, he's got that set up in Mullet, and I think I know someone else is thinking about that too. Do you know who I'm talking about, Rich?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at methanol too. Honestly, straight up, I'm going to go to sick week this time, and I just dry decked mine and O-ring my block. So if I can go down there and crank up the boost a bit and run sub 850, then I might actually just stay with C16 and not switch over. It's about 100 pounds in my car with getting rid of all of the air to water, which would be a whole lot nicer on the transmission, drive shaft, and axles, and
engine, everything,
right? Everything, yeah. But we'll see. It's pretty it's really safe on C16, and going through the traps at like 80 degrees, the air to water is that efficient, so it's just really safe, especially when you're 3,000 miles from home. It's kind of nice to have that.
It's kind of a long drive or tow home.
Yes, yeah, it would be a plane ride probably. Just leave it down there, leave the trash down there.
Leave it down there and get it back. Yeah, my dual fuel system would be like actual true dual fuel system to where like you don't actually unhook anything. All you do is you unhook the trailer and you go and drive. So the 8 injectors would come on at X amount of boost with the methanol, and it would be a whole seamless dream. That's my dream, at least. So
yeah, that is what I would do too. I would.
I think that'd be it. Yeah,
I'd have the exact same as you. I'd have probably a 3 or 4 gallon methanol tank in the front, standalone, to 8 of its own injectors, and then the pump gas would be on its 8 of its own injectors as well. But
yeah, I think that would.
That's what I would. Yeah, lots of the drag and drive guys do that. I think Tina Pierce. There's a bunch of people that do that. You can hear it transition from pump gas, and then when you let off at the end, it's right back to pump gas, and you can cruise back, and 2 or 3 gallons gets it done. But
yeah, we built a half-mile car, a GTR, that's set up the exact same way actually. 18 injectors total, 12 on methanol. 6 on pump gas, and basically at 15 pounds of boost, it's basically 100% methanol all the time, and has a secondary tank, a fuel system, all that stuff. So it's been 232 so far in the half mile. Wow. And you could drive the car around like a stock car, in terms of you just put pump gas in it. So that's kind of my dream. There's already just a lot of shit in this car, so adding more to it is. Yeah.
So Myles, on that GTR, how big are those methanol injectors?
Yeah, so actually same size injectors I run. I run 2 sets of ID 2600s. So that car has 12 ID 2600s, and then I run obviously mechanical pump, and I run about 115 pound base.
Oh yeah.
And how much power does I'm just trying to think about like fuel supply on methanol. So like let's just use the GTR for example. Did you say 12? So 2 injectors per cylinder, and each injector is 2600.
3 total technically on that car. 2 on methanol, 1 on pump, but obviously it switches to just straight. So yeah, 2 injectors, 2600 cc each, And like it's probably very similar to how much this car consumes. Like this car's about 85% injector duty cycle at 79, 80 pounds boost at 9,000 RPMs. And it's a lot of fuel. So if you're on what is your car on ethanol or methanol now?
Mine's on
Or
pump
ethanol or
gas,
pump gas.
and
So
then C16 at the track.
you'll need double the injector that you have right now just to make the same power.
Yeah, so like that GTR, how much power is that producing with that much injector?
It's made 2,100, almost 2,200 horsepower to the wheels on our dyno.
And those injectors are like 80%.
They're probably 85 to 90% in that range. Yeah.
My God, that's so much fuel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, mine is still. I have ID 2000s in mine, and it's less than 50%.
I was going to say it's probably 50%. Yeah.
It's not much. It's like maybe 47, 48% on C16.
Yeah.
So
I mean, C16 is nice. You don't ever have to worry about it being, an issue, right? Like the octane's there. Like, I remember when I was out of fuel system years ago, I was on, E98 and we would mix, 50% C16 and methanol or an ethanol to be able to make more power and still have a little bit of the ethanol side of it. So I love the smell of C16 and Q. Like they're my two favorite smelling fuels for sure.
Yes. It's that smell of money. That's what it is.
It's the smell of money. Yes. Yeah. And everyone's like I said, we build a lot of street cars for customers. So they're like, well, I want to go to ethanol. And I'm like, well, like you could not spend $3,000 right now and just buy $3,000 worth of C16 over the next year and a half. And it's probably safer in some ways. So, I have the argument all the time with people, not argument, but it's like, there's different ways you can do this still.
So let me ask another question. Since you guys do a ton of race cars, clearly you have clients that want to run E85.
Mm-hmm.
So initially I was running I would run E70 because I didn't have quite enough fuel pump. And when I talked to Aeromotive, they were like, they couldn't believe the power I was making even on E70 with the pump I had.
Aeromotive is very conservative on their ratings.
Well, that's good to know. But my concern always was, everybody's like, oh, E85 is so cheap. Yeah, but pump E85, they're probably mixing the base fuel as like the worst gas, and then E85. So, how safe is that actually in a race motor? Like, I would still be wanting to change fuels and put a race E85 if I was going to go that route.
That's and we've actually we kind of have not do we build a lot of race cars, we build a lot of customer street cars, so we kind of have anything above 35, 40 pounds of boost, and these are small motors. We recommend a E98 pump 92 mix. So anything above, anything below 40 pounds, 35 to 40, 45 pounds, we're like, hey, we need to make sure this is good mixed fuel. So we actually have 700 gallons of E98 that gets delivered to us whenever we need it at the shop, and we'll mix that fuel with pump 92 for a higher quality E85. After 50 pounds of boost, we recommend a race ethanol of some sort, or just switch the car to methanol. So I know 1R, C85, Ignite Red, all of those, are a higher octane or a better E85. And so when someone says I'm on pump E85, you could be on pump E85, but if you're running a lot of boost, making a lot of power on it, we feel like you're probably getting to the point of being truly octane limited. Like you said, they can mix the stuff with 40 or 50 octane, really crappy fuel, pump gas. And, there is different quality E85s. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like they look at that as an opportunity to get rid of the junk fuel, and they just mix it with alcohol, E85 or ethanol to just get rid of the junk fuel. Cause you can't,
I think so. I mean, if you're on obviously in your aspect, you've got a V8, right? You've got probably, like you said, 25 to 30 pounds of boost at most. Truly, E85 out of the pumps, probably. Maybe if you're 20, but 15, 20, 25 pounds really isn't a big deal on pump E85, right? And people have this thought that just because the ethanol content's higher, it makes so much more power. It really doesn't make more power from E85 to E98. but it's safer, you know?
Yeah, and so the stoichiometric ratio for power is like in the nines for ethanol, right? And then for methanol, it's in like the
I think
threes or
so.
fours, right? So you're still way more fuel on methanol than you are on ethanol, even like E98.
Yeah, I mean it's like 30 or 40 more percent, 30 to 40 more percent fuel. Yeah,
Yeah,
from
that's a lot.
E98 to M1 methanol. Yeah, yeah, and we've dabbled a lot with M5 methanol for years too. M5 is just harder on stuff like the pins, the bearings. No matter, you make another 5% more power. But Bill from BME, he's like, you're taking the best fuel you ever can, M1 methanol, and mixing it with something that, and he says, is 0 octane. And so you're making the methanol lower quality octane than M1. And yeah, it makes more power, but it's definitely harder on stuff. The
And,
pins always bend, everything.
and so for the people listening, and maybe even one of the co-hosts, educate us on what M5 is.
So M5, I believe, has 5%. I don't want to say it's nitro, but it's 5% something that I believe is a nitro of some sort. Someone told it to me once and I forgot, but the consensus is it's got nitro mixed in with it, and it truly does make 5% power just putting it in your car. I've done the test on the dyno. It really makes 5% more without changing a single thing on the car. And if you're go ahead.
So if it's nitro, which I think that's correct.
Yeah.
That's more oxygen because nitromethane it's an oxygen bearing
Yes.
fuel. So that's where the power
Correct.
is coming from.
Yes, yeah, the power's from bringing its own oxygen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome.
So we dabbled and did a lot of that, we've never, like, a lot of people go to it and treat it like you treat M1. Like some people run M1 really lean, some run it really rich. The tuning window on M1 is huge. You've got a lot of variants you can go. The M5 is like this big.
Oh.
So so it's a lot smaller, which is why people are like, we don't run M5. Like a lot of places, a lot of the fastest cars out there, you'll probably see none of them run it, really. Not many do.
So the car behind you, is that a giant intercooler I'm looking at?
That is giant air-to-air intercooler, correct? Yeah.
Okay, so at 80 pounds of boost, what kind of intake temps are you seeing?
I see probably a 50 to...
Do you check temp before and after the intercooler?
I don't have before. I have it all plumbed for before. Like there's sensors and wiring and stuff. There's wiring over there, but I never installed the sensor. So I only know what I start out with and what I end with. And at let's say 70 pounds of boost on the big turbo, I have about a 40 to 50 degree spike. So it's pretty close to ambient, probably 10 to 15 above. And it ends up, let's say, in the 125 to 140 range. So it might start in the 70 and go up to, or in the 90 and go up to 130 to 140
so
degrees.
You're only seeing a 40 to 50 rise in a pass, making that much boost.
Depends on how cold it is, what turbo, but I've varied, and this is a fast reacting one. 40 to 70 above ambient is about the average, depending on the boost, which turbo I have, ambient outside. But yeah, that's a pretty good number. Yeah,
That's
very impressive. Yeah,
it's a really big intercooler. It's 12-inch by 5 by 26 core, I believe. So it's pretty big.
Big, yes.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah, it's shrouded. The front bumper, it's shrouded all around. There's a lot of duct tape or Gorilla Tape that holds it together. That's why I got a couple of stacks of them over here. But half the car is held together with a lot of that stuff.
Speed tape, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to back you up. I want to ask you some more questions.
Yeah.
You do a burn, or you don't do a burnout, and so you just
Nope.
do you have a handbrake, or do you?
I do have a big old staging brake that looks like a drift staging brake. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
And so I'm a fan of preloading myself.
Oh, you do, right? That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So
my staging procedure is oh, go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
Okay, so my staging procedure is I'll come in and I will light the top bulb, and I will have my foot up a little to where the car's dragging, just a tiny bit, and the staging brake will hold it back. And then I'll wait, or, I don't care to play games with the tree. I can go in first. I can go in second. None of it really phases me doing it as much as I have. So I actually keep the car revved up to about 65, 7,000 RPMs, kind of like just holding there, like about 30% throttle. And then when that comes up, and let's say he lights the bulb, I go in light bulb, I floor it, I keep my foot where it's at, I hold it back still enough to where if I let off the staging brake, the car would pull forward. And it only takes 0.8 of a second to go from 0 to 25 to 35 pounds of launch boost. And then I just dump the clutch in that at the same time, and off I go.
I was going to ask you how much boost. That is amazing. I typically run like 15 pounds of boost. I feel like a little kid. It's like...
And is well, like you said, double the size of the motor. So is your car on a radial or a slick? Probably a radial, right?
When I go to Sick Week in Florida, where the tracks are great, I've been running a radial, and then I've ran a slick up here, but still got some chassis stuff. I'd like to run the radial all the time, but down in Florida, it makes you feel like a hero. Makes anyone seem like they're a good chassis tuner, but the tracks are so sticky down there. Like,
I wish the radial. I think it'd be very difficult to control the radial in a true all-wheel drive car without really like a true slipper of some sort, because this car just blows the front tires off right away. So there's a lot of wheel speed right away that actually helps it. I learned this last go. I've got some suspension stuff to mess with, but I would launch the car and the car would plant, and then about 2.5, 3 feet out, it would unload, and then the rear tires would spin. And that's the first time I've experienced this, because it's the first time I've launched the car and it didn't bog. Like the 771 at 192 actually bogged down to like 5,500. That was the first time that I was able to hit the car so hard to where it actually spun all four. So the suspension, we're going to add some more rebound into it so that I can get it from that squat and hopefully stay there. I feel like the slick car works better with a little bit of slip still, a little bit of wheel slip all around. And I don't have very much experience with the radials, but I watch them all, and I see that if they spin, there's not much of a pass. It's over, So
violent spin. They shake so hard. Yeah.
So I've ran a Toyo R88. This car's been like 860 at 186 on a Toyo R88R all around. And I have to be very, very soft off the line with the clutch on that one, because if it spins too much, it just has that. It wheel hops and the whole car shakes and your dash looks like it's going to fall out and your teeth are chattering. And we all know that feeling.
Just waiting for something to snap. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. What's going to break next? So if I end up doing a drag and drive, I have an M&H bias ply, like an old school looking bias ply tire that is a very not very easy tire to get, but I've been 8.0 on that tire, and it's a true DOT street tire, nothing. Wow. So that's my dream, not change wheels or tires the entire time.
And hope you don't get caught in the rain.
Hope I don't get caught in the rain. Well, I feel like no matter what I drive, if I get caught in the rain, I'm pretty much just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Wow. That's so awesome.
Do you have a pro on your car?
No, I used to have a full under tray on the car, like when I used to do half-mile events. So this car's been 216 and a half mile before, which is, it's hard to say like how you compare that. But the easiest way I always tell people is if you took a Bugatti Veyron, you put on the half mile, it'll do 170. So that gives you an idea of how fast. And you're doing it on an airport that doesn't have any prep whatsoever. So traction is the biggest problem. And so I used to have a full under tray on the car. So a 2-piece under tray. There's a front under tray that goes on it that has the catch pan and everything built in. And then the rear has, I have an entire I think a 10.5-foot diffuser I built that, all of it worked. All it was good. Someone ran it over in an event I was at, and I have never put it back on because ever since then it just kept going faster. So it's an extra 60 pounds in the car that I don't need. And it makes the car difficult to work on because you can't get to anything. You can't put it on jack stands very easily. So I have everything to design another one, but I haven't. Obviously, this car, it's kind of surprising. There's a hole in the hood So that's a vent there. I learned that the hard way, not having one. When I first did the under tray in the car, all the air coming in has to find a way out, right? You got this huge, massive, inlet on there, and the entire under tray blew out on like 180 on a half mile event. So that day I just cut a hole in the hood, and like I never had an issue since. So then I finally did like a nice vented hood, and so a lot of you can see some cool pictures of the car at about 100, 150, 60, 70 miles an hour. You can see the heat sink coming right out of the hood, and it kind of follows the car right after. Also really amazing pictures when it blows up. All of that. Yep.
All the parts.
So, yep, all the parts. Or I've got a pretty good video. It blew up on a half mile event years ago at like 208 miles an hour. And it just, the entire windshield was oil and you couldn't see a single thing. So there's positives and negatives, the holes and hoods.
Wow. Yeah, that's
parachute brakes and hold it on tight.
And that time I had the factory power brakes still. So I flipped the chute. I was on the brakes. I couldn't see this way, so I was looking out of the corner of my eye because you're on an airport. So I knew where the grass was, and I knew that the closer I got to it, the safer I was in terms of oiling it down for everywhere else. And I think it took like 7 or 8 seconds to go from 200 to completely stopped. And I think the engine was still running. And when I tried to get out, because it was all smoky, so I didn't know if it was on fire. That's my biggest fear is fire. So one of them at least.
So I'm curious, when you're at events racing, is there a lot of smack talk or lack of camaraderie from the traditional domestic rear-wheel drive guys to the import guys? Because you guys are putting the beat down on a lot of rear-wheel drive traditional V8 type stuff.
I feel like most of the people I've been around, depends on where you go in the USA, because there's always import haters everywhere you go.
Yep.
And there's always that. But, I'll be honest, like most of the places I've gone, I've never really gotten into any, I'm not much of a shit talker. Like I'm just kind of who I am. And, we can all get in those arguments we're talking, but I every time I bet on myself, I lose. So I stop betting on myself too. So I just go out and I'm just like, yeah, man, let's go. Let's have fun. Like I'm all about that. But there's a lot of shit talking. There's a lot of people, and, imports around here. We're not the outcasts, but like a lot of the tracks are like, oh, you're an import. Oh, imports over there. Like it's still the same thing. You still get it. I would say, there's definitely still a lot of people who are like, oh, imports suck. But, there's also probably way more people that are like, man, it's amazing what you guys are doing, which I think that it truly is. Like, I think Granite still has the highest mile an hour for a stick shift import, right? So a stick shift car, right? Or
No, I think
he's been 220 something.
Oh, maybe mile an hour? Yeah.
Mile an hour. He's got the mile an hour. So the imports are, I think the right engine, the right combo behind them, they're better, they work.
The advantage I see that you guys have, especially now that you're incorporating all-wheel drive stuff, is it's traction, because the front-wheel drive cars have always had that issue, launching them.
They always will for life. There's no way around that one.
You have the traction. You're making insane power, especially for the size of the power plant, but the weight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like your car, and educate me here, but I feel like your car is on the heavier end of the import stuff. Some of these things are sub 2,000 pounds, are they not?
A lot of the classes we race in require the cars to be a certain weight. So like all the front wheel drive cars with like a 73 millimeter turbo have to be 2450 with driver. Okay. My car is definitely a heavy car in the Acura or Honda race world for sure. It is probably 100 to 150 pounds heavy compared to most of the real fast all-wheel drive Hondas or all-wheel drive cars in general, other than obviously GTRs and stuff like that. I do think you can get them really light, but I also know that you get these cars too light, and then they're too light, then traction becomes even more of a problem if it's a front-wheel drive car, and like you guys probably figured, like weight in the right place is a key thing here too. So It's kind of a catch-22. If there was 300 pounds out of my car, it should definitely go faster. Will it be able to put down the same amount of power in second gear is the real question. There's that argument, and I don't know enough. I haven't been there yet. So if I got 100 pounds, 150 pounds out of the car, I would feel much better because the car would definitely go quicker and faster and be easier on everything like we talked about earlier on your car. So, yeah.
Nice.
It's such an impressive car because you don't even have to do a burnout. So the no prep scene, have you played in the no prep scene? I think you're on the West Coast though, aren't you? So
I'm on the West Coast, so I'm in not just the West Coast, the Northwest. So where we don't have I've been to I've done some no prep stuff. I did a couple years ago, or 2022, I filmed with Street Outlaws. They did a series that was like their street car series.
Yep.
And so like I took all the stickers off. I left the stickers on the car, but I pulled the parachute off, put full interior in the car, made it look like a total street car. They said that you had to run ethanol. So I ran a ethanol-methanol blend, and we're talking like 10% ethanol, mix it in, just left everything the same. They required us all-wheel drive cars to run a hard tire of some sort. So I ran a Toyo on that. And I wish that I could go back to that because I've learned so much racing this car, the clutch setup, everything about it, that my car's like a whole second faster now. So like to me, I could go back and be much faster, and I would love to do no prep races. Truthfully, like I've never actually been on a no prep on a road that is prepped. Every road that I've been to is like a virgin road, and this car's been 580 in the 8th on a virgin road on a Toyo. So on a virgin road, yeah.
Easy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I do think you put some of these cars on real virgin roads. Like, I've learned enough that I watched the road come around after a lot of burnouts and stuff. It comes around fast on the right road. So really all-wheel drive to me only ever has an advantage on a very virgin, fresh road. Even when you get into really good roads, the rear-wheel drive cars are still a little better, And I guess if we took a rear-wheel drive car with a stick and a clutch, I think that would change a lot of stuff, But a lot of these Turbo 400 cars or Power Glides or whatever they have, you can really control the power management. You're not worrying about, is my clutch a little worse here, or is it going to grab a little more? Did I preload it way more and it just grab a little different? Like there's a lot of little things that happen. I'm sure you guys know. So
yeah, talk to me
You don't have
about
to worry about what color your purse is either.
that's
exactly.
true.
Yeah. Well, see, none of us want it. Yeah. Like that's the thing. It's like you're in a car that you have to bang the gears and like you have to go through that. And like, yeah, like you said, it's a lot easier to race some of these other cars. Like the stick shift racing is just so much more fun because like, Texas proved that anything can literally happen. Anything can happen. You could go against the number one qualifier and he gave it a little too much in second gear and it just spun the tires and then you're ahead and it's a chase to the end. And that's what the semifinals between me and Granis were. He gave it a lot and the track couldn't hold at that time. It was getting colder out. Someone maybe oiled it down, whatever, but you literally get down to anything and anyone can win. It's never the fastest car. Fastest car does win quite often, but a good chunk of the time, it's not the fastest car that wins. I mean, I think Chuck, I watched Thick Week last year. You won in the end, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. There was
and you weren't the fastest car by any means.
No, there was 3 cars that all had 750 certs.
Yeah.
And they all broke before day 2 was over. And so then I was half a second faster than the next guy, Frank Romano. And, I didn't back it down a whole bunch. I just didn't turn it up. And
yep. You didn't need to. You just kept it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Yeah,
sure
it's
that
crazy. Those guys that went out, they only put 200 miles on the car, Rich, and you'd already done 3,200, right?
Yeah, that to me is that takes a lot of dedication and honestly super impressive. So that's I don't think I'm going to drive it. 3,000 miles, but I definitely am truly going to start on trying to do. I think I'm not signed up for anything yet, but there is like a Northwest Drag and Drive, I think that's called Redwood Wiley, that if everything. So I'm the kind of guy, like, I'm going to make sure, even though, like, I know that there's going to be things I don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to do everything I can to know that the car's as ready as possible. Like, if I can't drive the car 2 hours with my jet ski towed behind it this summer, then I'm not even going to attempt to go to one of these drag and drives.
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah. Because
So
it's a lot of, say that again?
Do you have an overdrive in your car?
No, I mean, I can put a taller fourth gear in it. So it'd be like a 909 fourth gear. Right now it's a 1045 fourth. I can go to a 909 fourth or a 1045 at the moment. So, 65 miles an hour is like 35 to 4,000 RPM. So it's kind of annoying. Yeah.
It's it's the only thing that keeps, because I'm 521 cubes and Pontiac, so not a lot of spare parts at Kmart on the way down there.
Yeah.
And,
or AutoZone.
or AutoZone, and so I have a 350 rear gear with a 0.56, so I can go.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Miles.
So what, 1,500, 2,000 RPMs or something?
Yeah, it's like 1,700 RPM is 80 miles an hour.
Yeah,
that's cool. The engine's cool because you got so much airflow at that speed, and your sanity's still there because it's not high RPM. But
winging itself high. You have a dog box, or what kind of tranny's in it?
Yeah, it's a face plated 6-speed. So
okay, so helical gears still.
Yeah, they are actually. Yeah,
a little bit.
So it's
a little bit of a twist.
Relatively quiet in comparison to these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say I'll be like Cletus with the sound canceling everything to talk to the guy next to me.
Yeah.
So
Myles, because I'm not super familiar, talk to me about the Hitmaster and how it works. Because I know
you're intrigued, you're curious.
I am curious. I mean, clearly him and I are in the same space for clutch control.
Yep.
But tell me more about that, because I don't know a lot about it.
So it's essentially there's a line lock in the middle. I guess the valve itself is he doesn't call it a valve, he calls it like a regulator, I believe is what I've heard him call it. Someone's going to correct me on this, I'm sure. But it's like a flow regulator, a valve of some sort. So, the further you push it in, the more pressure it bypasses, right? So the more pressure it bypasses, which means that the clutch pressure should be higher.
So when you put it in, does it release faster or slower?
Slower.
Okay, so it slows it down the more you crank it in.
Correct, and then the line lock itself, it holds it where you want, right? So it's kind of like a 2-stage. And it drops it fast, right? It drops the clutch right away, and then the line lock holds it at that once it's activated for time, distance, mile an hour. He has a whole closed loop system that you can get that's a timer based. Obviously, I have the ECU control it based off vehicle speed and engine speed and stuff like that. So it's like a 2-stage valve, I guess you could say. It drops right away. Because like the Magnus valve is just like a single, like, parabolic looking half, it works, but it's very slow to cut a light. It's really difficult to cut a light on that kind of, like I can cut a light on this. So when I drop it, it drops it, it holds the clutch at that desired pressure that I've come up with. And you just come up with that by just playing with it of what works on your car, holds it at that pressure until the line lock drops it, or when you act like mine, I think drops at like 45 miles an hour roughly. And it just lets it go. And then it hopefully you slipped it enough, or not too much, not too little to where you didn't bog, and it's just in that right range. I hope that explained it.
A little bit. So it's pressure based. So you don't necessarily have to have the clutch all the way on the floor when you launch the car. You don't. You are preloading it and slipping it a little, but you're holding it with the handbrake.
Yep. Which all of that ties into whatever pressure you thought worked Like, let's just say I launch my car at 700 pounds of pressure, and that's how I set the valve without it being stationary. When you rev the engine up and you preload it, all of that changes. So I've just learned that, okay, to cut this 60 foot with this car this day, this was the pressure that I set it at. And then I look at when I launch the car, I have a little in the dash, I have a little position thing that shows the pressure. So if I'm not, if I'm making sure I have the right amount of preload on it and the dash is telling me, hey, we're in that range, you're good.
Green light.
Some people, green light, we're good. I know some people put bright lights in to let them know that they've, there's a lot of things that people do.
Yeah.
I do a lot by feel and how the car feels, and then I look at the data after. So I think it's super simple. It's nothing really crazy, and you can get it, and it has the timer base. So, and he'll kind of tell you that, 1.3 seconds is like this. And I don't think I've learned that myself with my car, because I think every car is a little different. It's a very simple thing. It works really good. You just have a little setup, and it doesn't matter. Everywhere you go, it's going to be different depending on if you have a front wheel drive, all wheel drive, rear wheel drive car, what tire. Every setup's going to be completely different. So, I think it's super easy. I've looked into yours, actually. I almost stopped by and talked to you at PRI, but I've how PRI goes. Something happens so fast.
So everything's what's this? Yeah.
Yeah. So can you explain how yours works? Just because I'm extremely always curious about something better if it's out there.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's better. Grant really, he started the way with the original clutch tamer, and I think he's done great stuff. So I am not going to say anything bad about it, because he's been nothing but fantastic online with comments and stuff too. So we're just in the same space. So the bank shift Billy it's all time based, and it's activated off of a clutch switch. And the setting of that clutch switch is absolutely crucial to making it work. And there's been some arguments that, if you dump the clutch slow, it's going to affect it. You dump it fast. You just have to dump the clutch the same every time. And I don't think that's too difficult. I mean, you're going to dump the clutch, you dump the clutch, you just sidestep it.
Yeah. For people who don't race a lot, it's probably difficult because they're not used to it. But us who race our cars all the time, we like to think we're the same every time.
Yes. So in similar terminology to the clutch tamer, mine you adjust the bite point. So you can cut a light, because if the clutch pedal stroke is 4 inches long, the first 3 inches, it doesn't do anything. It's not engaging or biting yet. So it'll go right through that first 3 inches. Then you fine tune that bite point or the engagement point. And that will change. If it's a no prep, you can't hit that bite point as hard. If it's a really prep track, you don't think you're going to break the car, you can hit it a little harder. And then you can set either a ramp for release, or you can do hold time, which is exactly what you're talking about. Same kind of thing, and then it releases. And you can do a combination of both as well. We have some people using them in like tractor pull type deals, and they're slipping the clutch way longer than we would ever do in a drag car.
Probably.
You see the videos, the shower of sparks coming out of these trucks. But that's it. And you make adjustments to it via an app on your phone. It connects via Bluetooth. And you just make settings, and then that's it. You don't have to have the phone in the car once you set it. That's it. So
that definitely seems super cool to be able to have an app on your phone that's like, let me just adjust this right here. So that seems like a pretty good design, though. Depending on, like you said, a couple of things that someone once always bitch about how, like, I dropped the clutch the same way this time, and did you?
Yeah, and I will say that, like, again, the micro switch setup is super imperative. I know. Yeah. I went out. Mike Finnegan has one on Blasphemy, and I went out there, and it's a very stressful day because the end result was not really what I was hoping for. Some challenges, but in all fairness, we spent half the day working through some other things on the car that had nothing to do with the transmission.
Nothing to do with it. Probably had nothing to do with anything you did, and it's usually how it goes. Like, we're always constantly screwing with our cars, and it's like everything we wanted to work on that day, we couldn't because we had the other shit we needed to work on.
Exactly. And that car is a little different than my car, than a lot of the other cars because at 3,000 RPM with that blower, that thing's making like 1,000 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah.
Like my car, turbo car, no, it's not going to make 20 pounds of boost at 3,000 RPM. That'd be a good trick. I may need to work on that. But
so the power management on that car is a lot more crucial when it comes to the clutch side of it.
It is. And some of the changes that he's making that we didn't have at that point was the way that the clutch switch was set up. And I actually want to post a video on this, but like on my own car, I have a little bracket on the clutch pedal with a fine threaded bolt, like a carriage bolt. And that bolt is actually, the head of that is what engages the clutch switch, because the clutch switch itself, I use one of those Armstrong switches that like the pro stock guys use and stuff.
Sure.
It has a spline shaft, but the spline shaft, it's a very coarse adjustment, like between the two. So you get it close, but then with that fine thread bolt, you can really dial in.
You can get it even closer.
That point where it needs to be. And that's how it works. I mean,
that's good.
That's in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes sense.
That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we all wish we had a slipper clutch available. We didn't have to touch after every pass, right?
I mean, Bill always harasses me because I have to jack my car up when I get to the track, loosen it all off. He's harassing me that I'm adjusting my app. And then, but for me, it just about takes longer to jack the car up than it does adjust the 6 settings.
The weights.
Or the 6.
Or the 6.
I don't touch the weights, thankfully, because weights are.
You just touch the actual
base pressure.
The base pressure. Yeah. Once now that you've got to the point where it's so set up and ready that you know that all you have to do is adjust the base. It's a lot nicer.
And RPM. Yeah, I've learned a lot racing with Rich on how a slipper clutch works, and I don't even have one.
Yeah.
It actually it works really, really well. His setup, I really do like Rich's setup as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Without a slipper clutch and 4,100 pounds and 1,500 pounds of torque,
you'd struggle. Yeah.
And you may have broken nearly everything.
Pretty much broken everything. Yeah. Well, I was just loading up the car for sick week, and there was a spare transmission in there. There's a spare drive shaft in there. There's spare axles in there. There's a center section in there. Like, I pretty much have the back half, a spare clutch in there.
And so, I saw the other day you posted it was like minus 40 degrees where you're at right now. So do you drive the car from there to like good weather, or do you trailer it from there to good weather and then like drive from there? Like, how do you?
I don't have a trailer at all. I think people don't believe me, but I do have a truck now, but it's a 5-cylinder Colorado that couldn't
that's not towing anything.
It couldn't get out of its own way. And, thankfully it's not minus 40 here. In fact, it's going to be pretty close to freezing when I leave. And so I tell people is I'm going to hop in the car and start driving and not stop until I see some green grass. But the reality is there's, the polar vortex and there's some pretty cold weather. So my brother's got a magnetic heater and my oil pan's still steel. So I think I'm just going to bring that with me so that if I end up somewhere where it's going to be below freezing, because I have 2050 in the car. And
same. Yeah, I would definitely, as we saw in the little video the other day, how thick that oil is when it's cold. It's just crazy.
Well, even 530 at minus 40 for 24 hours, it's like it's
2050 in the warm.
Yeah, it's not. It's worse than gear oil after
that's
24
crazy.
hours. Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know how the cars all survive. Like Volkswagens, Mini Coopers, there's so many of them. They don't even have block heaters in them, and so they start up. They make all kinds of noise, but amazingly, it doesn't seem like there's any ill effects. It is amazing.
Well, what is curious? Yeah, what is curious, Rich, is a lot of the new cars they're running like the 0W20 or even the 015s, I think.
Zero 20s, yeah.
So be curious to see what that looks like, but it's still going to be thick.
Actually,
It's got to be thick.
I did test some 020 and it was pretty good actually. Like even after 24 hours outside, it was it was the best flowing for sure. But
that's awesome. That's good.
I don't think I could run that stuff and get out of my block in my in the Pontiac because I got big clearances.
That's one of the things I'm kind of worried about with the billet block I have is we had to set the mains so tight because of how much the block grows, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have a dry sump in this car; it's all stock. So, they're like, set it. We set it like 1.7, 1.8, right, on the main bearing. But at 150 degrees, that's going to open up to probably 3 to 3.5. They say the block grows quite a bit. So, what I'm used to is a 2.7 to 2.8 main bearing clearance. I'm a thou tighter now. My machine shop's like, oh, you can't turn this over till the oil's up to 100 degrees. I'm like, what? So that right now to me, I don't know. That's just what I was just told. So the billet block in terms of starting out, it's going to it's like I don't really want to have to plug an oil heater in every time I go to drive this car around. So that is one slight concern I do have, or annoyance, that we'll see how that works out for me.
So does billet move a lot more than cast?
I believe the 6061, it grows quite a bit more because this actually has a steel girdle in it, factory. So the girdle itself is steel, not aluminum. At least the bottom part is. Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
It is amazing what that block puts up with. I can't believe you're putting that kind of. I missed. Was it stock heads or is it aftermarket?
It's a stock cast head still. Yeah. With just aftermarket parts in it. Yeah.
That is freaking amazing.
I mean, it's kind of like the Coyote motor these days. They're doing pretty impressive stuff without a lot done to them. From what I'm gathering, from what they are, I look at Brett's car and I'm like, doesn't seem like there's anything super crazy. There's nothing, there's some stuff, but it's not like it's a stock crank still, right? And that's pretty uncommon in the V8 world to have a stock crank making 2,500 horsepower.
Well, yeah, it is a short stroke. It's a pretty light little motor. But let me ask you this. So really, a function of horsepower production comes down to the cylinder head and how much air it can move. So you got a 4-valve head.
Exactly.
Aerody's got a 4-valve head.
Yep.
What kind of CFM, max lift, what kind of CFM do you see? Do you know what those numbers look like on your head?
I don't know what the CFM is. I know max lift is, we're going to say the max lift on the camshaft is, I think, just under right at 12 millimeter on the intake side. So it's not even a half inch or right around a half inch, lift. So not a lot,
lift-ish.
Yeah. Not quite. It's like 480, I think, but it's like you said, everything's like an air pump, right? How quick you can get the air in and out. And that's the big part why some 4-cylinder engines just suck and don't make anything for power no matter what you do. And then, these motors revved factory to 8,000 RPMs, right? Or 7,500 to 8,000. So factory off the showroom floor. So I think it was a very efficient, naturally aspirated motor factory that we've made a little better by porting the cylinder heads and the bulwark and the valve grinding and the valves, everything else around it.
What did that thing make stock horsepower?
So I actually dynoed this car 100% stock and it made 145 to the wheels. I've multiplied the power by 10.
Maybe a little.
I've got an even funnier part. I took the car down to the drag strip when it was completely stock and trapped 83 miles an hour. So I've added 100 miles an hour to the trap speed too. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I have this, box of time slips here with all the, the first time, my first 7-second pass in here, and I've got the first 16-second pass in it. So, yeah, I've done a lot with the car and I've had it for a long time. So there's a lot of love with it, I guess you could say. I'll definitely never sell it because no one's gonna ever give me what it's worth. So
Right.
all of us race car guys, we're like, our cars are worth way more than what you're gonna pay.
Right. Yeah. I've wasted way more money than you'd ever pay me for it.
Yeah, I added it up like a year and a half ago, and I was like, what it would take to duplicate the car in everything I could remember, not including labor, and it was over 100,000.
Yeah. I wonder if you could build a reliable 8-second or even a 7-second car for under 6 figures. I know lots of people will say they've done it, this and that, but I'm saying reliable, not like a one shot.
Well, and is it
kind
exactly? And the question remains: is it a shop building it? Is it you and you're getting the deals on every part? It's like there's such a big range of probably 25 to 30% of a cost that you would change. So I don't know if you could buy a car and have it dead consistent for a 7-second call. I think it'd be pretty difficult.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess you kind of nailed it. I think really that your skill set that you bring to the table is going to be a huge factor. Because you look at that, like Beater Bomb, they don't have a ton of money in the car, but they bring a gigantic skill set to the game.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and it may not cost a lot to get there now that they're there, but they probably spent and took a long time to get there. And so that's a key point, like you said.
And what is their time worth? Because it's hard to put a dollar figure on. Like you got 3 really smart dudes. They put 100 hours each into it.
Mm-hmm.
You pay them for their time. It's going to cost a lot.
Exactly. So like I think that's the thing is like if you don't have the skill set yourself, then it's definitely going to cost more, especially if you have to take it somewhere to do it. And that's there are shops that you could take cars to, depending on what you're building, that they have the skill set and the mindset behind to be able to build you what you want and be a fairly decent, reliable car to a certain extent. Obviously, if you're not trying to run 6s in a car that shouldn't even barely run 7s, right? So, keep your goals, realistic, right? So yeah, that's one of the things I always deal with customers. Like, oh, I want to make 1,000, 1,200 horse. I'm like, are you ready to build a second motor like right away? Like, because it's not if but when there's a problem at that power level in a 4-cylinder.
You know what I think is so funny is everybody says, "Oh, I want to make 1,000 horse in a street car." Like,
yeah,
have they ever driven that? Because
exactly,
I've found, and I drive around on radials. 275 being like a Toyo, like it's a decent radial. And I found anything over about 700 horse on the street it's frankly dangerous. I mean, it's neat at first doing burnouts at 70 miles an hour on the highway until you just about crash. And then it's like,
exactly,
dude, this is not fun. Like 700 is good because on a normal day, if it's real cold out, it becomes more of a handful. But on a normal day, 3rd and 4th gear, you could pretty much lay into it at about, I have like 7 pounds of boost. It makes about 700 tire. Yeah. And it's good. But 1st and 2nd gear, it'll still just destroy the tires. But, I mean, it used to make 980 tire on the street, and it was just retarded. Like, it was cool, but it's just dangerous, and it's not worth to me, it's just not worth the risk of almost crashing. It's just not.
In a 2-wheel drive car, front wheel drive or rear wheel drive, it definitely not. All wheel drive cars, what they bring is the ability to put that power down so much, much better. Like before I went to Street Outlaws, I did testing on a closed road, and luckily it was like a 5-lane road, and it was it was definitely not a closed road. It was somewhere in Mexico, and I actually was just doing 1/8 mile hits, and I actually went 1st, 2nd, let off the top of 2nd, and it coasted to a 6.0 in the 8th. And so, and the next pass, it actually broke the front differential in the transmission, kicked the axle out. Then all that power, because the way this T-case is driven off the diff itself, it actually put all the power to the rear tires. And I've got this video inside and outside of this car sideways at 100 miles an hour, like this, and then like that, and like this, and you're catching it. And I was like, you know what? That was the last time I cared to do any of that shit on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like, oh, you don't know how to drive. And I'm like, dude, have you ever been in a car that had full traction and then went straight to rear wheel drive? Probably not.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, everybody wants 1,000 horse, but the reality is, and a stick car, I think, is different than an auto for sure, because the application is so different of the power.
Yeah.
So.
And they're just more rowdy, like a 1,000 horsepower car that you have to bang the gears, whether it's rear wheel drive or all wheel drive. It's just every shift, it's like power comes back on, and it's just nasty, and you don't get that like I have a customer, we built them an Evo that ran 9.0 at 158 in Bandamere, right? And he has a 2,200 horsepower Lamborghini, right? And he's like, the Evo is a more scary, rowdy car, like in terms of to drive it, how it feels, what it does. Is it
gray or silver?
His is red. His is red.
Okay.
Yeah, he went, I think he has the Colorado record right now. The car's back here to go to Texas. We're going to make more power, but he went 9.0 at like 158 in Bandamere right before, sometime in September or August, I think, sometime around there. Yeah.
Nice. Just before Copart took over the track, right?
I was just going to say, he was one of the last track rentals that Jamie and those guys, they did it too. So he was one of the last ones to be able to go down. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's getting it, especially at altitude.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. You got any more questions for him, Rich?
Well, there's a couple from the audience here. I see, where did the name English Racing come from? And then the last one, where did the name Gringo
Tegra come from? Perfect. Yeah. So, English, my boss's name is Lucas English. So, English Racing, that's where it came from. Not anything to do with English cars, he just came up with the idea of English and English Racing. So that's where that one came from. This car, so I grew up in the Dominican Republic, and I lived down there from the age of, I think 11 to 18. So I went to high school there, middle school, high school, went to a British school there, learned Spanish, and me looking like I do, going down to a, quite dark country, Hades right next to us. So I was called Gringo since day one. That's just what it was. And yeah, so Gringo. And then I bought an Integra, and I created a sign-in name on Honda Tech in like 2006. And I was like, what do I come up with? So I'm like, well, Gringotegra. I've got an Integra, and that's the name. And that just stuck, and it's kind of been like that ever since.
That's awesome. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, that's being racist or this, and I was like, dude, I grew up there, like I speak Spanish, like I live the culture, like that's just who they called us white people. They called any foreigner actually that went there a gringo, whether you're American, British, whatever, you're a gringo in all Latino countries.
It's funny you say that because there's it's not really a meme, but it's a short video clip of like a white dude, a gringo, dressed up, in the Mexican garb, and everyone's.
Oh yeah, I know what this one is. Yeah.
He goes to some Mexicans and asks them what they think, and they're like, "Oh, it's awesome! This is."
Yeah, we love it.
We love it. It's such bullshit. Yeah, it's.
And then they went to the Karens, and they were like, "Oh, we just think that's just not right." Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
Yeah, it is.
You said this. I didn't know this was live. Actually, you said there were some comments.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Travis.
Gotcha. Yeah. Travis perfect. I mean, not that I mattered. I was like, shit, where's it airing?
Yeah. Let's see here. So we have, and we may have pre-sent you these questions, but we have
TKO questions. Yeah. There's one of them I've been trying to think all day, but we'll worry about that when we get to it.
Rich, you want to hit it first?
Yeah, I think you might have answered it, but first car you owned or modified?
I didn't have this specific car, but in the Dominican, I had a 94 Acura Integra also. So
nice.
this wasn't the one, but in 2004, I bought my aunt and my mom bought me a 94 Integra just like this one, actually.
Nice.
You
we're gonna slam it down to second gear. What Myles, in your opinion, has been the biggest technology change to move our sport forward?
I feel like there's a couple of things, but I feel like the data management of all the import stuff over the last 5-6 years has come a long way, and knowing what to do with the data is being a bigger thing. I think that turbo technology has come such a long way in the last 5, 6, 7 years. I think more people racing has gotten a lot of stuff to, learn how to keep these cars together more. I do think data management's a big thing, for everything we do. Like, we made this power years ago, but we couldn't keep it together and like we can now without the data that we didn't have back then. So those are kind of my answers on that one.
Yeah, it's funny. The first thing that happened when I got a ECU in my car was I realized I wasn't putting my foot all the way to the floor. That data alone is really good to know why your car is bogging, and it's like, maybe the G-forces are throwing you back, and
Did I floor it here? Is the throttle not going 100%? Like, how's this working? Yeah, 100%.
Wrong. When you pull that data out, you don't want anybody else to see it. Like,
it's you.
You know what? It didn't log for some reason. That pass didn't log. delete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, this is probably the difficult question. So,
this is the one I've been thinking about all day. I there's so many directions I could go with it, but go ahead, answer.
Yeah, if you could spend one day with someone, who would it be? What would you do?
That one was a difficult one for me, because the nature of you wants to go, I want to spend this time with this famous race car person or some sort. And then I was like, but then I've met a lot of the cool people racing a lot that I looked up to over the years. So then I was like, all right, that's not really. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think the car is more famous than me. I'm just the same person. The car is what everyone knows. But and then I thought about life experiences and people who've been through a lot in life and what kind of they could offer to someone like myself. Just, I'm not old, but I'm not young. I'm not super young. I'm 36, so I'm kind of like mid-range, right? That what they call it?
It's one over the hill, man.
Yeah, I'm over the hill. So, and then like I thought about like it's just something I could probably take away something out of it in the end. So as weird as it sounds, either Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson would be two that I'd be just like lots of life experiences with both of them, leaving politics out of it because I'm not a very political person, but there's a lot of life experience with Jordan Peterson, just everything he's done. So I thought he would be a good one. What we would do, probably just sit and talk and eat all day, probably, to just learn thing. And then Joe Rogan, just because same thing, like he's more of a neutral kind of person, I would say, and he definitely he's talked to so many people. He's a super knowledgeable guy in a lot of aspects. And then I started playing golf again when I was in the 20 and when in my I played out of high school, which was when Tiger Woods was really up and coming. So I'd spend a day with Tiger Woods. They feel like someone who's been in the public eye for so long, accomplished so much, and just lost 27 years or whatever sponsorship with Nike. Like, it'd be interesting to know like what the whole reasoning and all that. So those were kind of my three.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
Typical guy breaking the rules right off the bat. Yeah, that's perfect.
So popping it into fourth gear, what influenced you to build your cars or car?
I just kept wanting to go faster, honestly. And that really, there was no vendetta to beat anyone. There was no, I want to do this and I want to be the fastest. Like, I started by turboing this car and just having fun and wanting to be faster myself. And I never built the car out of spite. I feel like when you try to build something to beat someone or out of spite, it just never seems to work out right. So for me, I just built it out of pure enjoyment. And this is like my religion. I don't have kids. I'm not married. This is my baby. So it was really personal gratification and doing something that we could do.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
there's nothing like getting back in the car after you've been out of it for a while and making that hit,
Mm-hmm.
clean pass, especially in a stick car, and you pull a chute, and you're like, oh yeah, baby,
You're like,
that's
yes.
why I spent all that money. Yeah, it's like,
Everything worked. Yes. Yeah. Texas will be the first one for me. So I have some hefty goals for Texas.
awesome. Yes, we should talk about that before we leave. What your plans are after this.
Yeah.
And then the next question, we're going to bang her into. I guess we're in
Fifth gear.
fifth gear. Yeah. Yeah. What, in your opinion, is the secret to stick shift racing?
I think data management, managing, seeing how everything works. I think that's a big part of it. Knowing what to do with that data, which you collect over the years. If you do it yourself, that's a big part. I think too, clutch management is something we could talk about. Maybe that could be in the data management side too, though, and honestly, seat time, because some cars are extremely easy to drive in terms of launching them, but when you deal with like a small motor, a big turbo, knowing how you need to slip the clutch, all these things. So I truly think just getting out there and racing your car a lot, learning it and enjoying it. I think those are probably the two biggest things to me: seat time and data management, knowing what to do with the data. And if you don't know what to do with the data, pair yourself with a shop that does, or somebody who does, that can help you improve.
Nice.
Awesome.
Now we're gonna go into the unknown for you. I know that, but 6
Okay.
years is pretty nice. So,
Yeah.
what advice? Yeah, what advice would you give to someone getting into this sport?
I think it kind of ties in with that last one. If
Yeah,
go out and race your car a lot, right? Enjoy your car racing it. Look at some stuff online to make sure, things definitely not to do. Like, don't sidestep your clutch in on a hard tire on the drag strip and let off, learn to maybe what doesn't feel right. When your whole entire car's shaking when you're doing something, it's probably not healthy. It's not good for it. So I think, and if you want to take it to the next level and you want to go faster, and if, like we talked about earlier, if you don't have the skill set to do that yourself, find somewhere that does, or someone who does that's willing to help you. Or if you've got the budget, take your car somewhere that can build the car for what you want, and then have them help you progress from there. That's what I would say.
Awesome.
I like it. I think that's super smart, for sure.
Before we wrap up,
yeah.
what's next? What's next for you? What's your next event?
Yeah, TX2K again will be. I'm competing in both the stick shift class and the roll race class, because I like to roll race, and I'm the only car that's basically a 4-cylinder car that's been over 200 in the roll race there. So I want to make they call it the Elite 8, which probably pretty difficult because I probably have to go like 205 to 210 in the roll, which in 1,500 feet, which is a lot. And then my goal for this year, there's two big goals for this year. A 750 and 200 miles an hour is the goal for this car. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good.
Dreaming it happens in Texas, but I know how that goes, so I'm not going to say it's going to happen until I'm 199 and next pass. This is the one.
Why don't you share all your social media and your business, where people can find out some more info? I know I started watching a podcast before this one that you were on.
Awesome. Yeah. So easy one, English_racing or English Racing on Instagram and Facebook. That's the shop that I manage. And then my personal stuff is Gringotegra on Instagram, and on Facebook, I believe it's called Gringotegra. The little Integra that could was kind of a nickname that 1320 gave me many years ago, because this car, when I go to the roll races, you've got this Integra in a sea of very expensive GTRs, R8s, Lamborghinis, Supras. Just you don't see an Integra in the sea of all these cars, so they deemed it the little Integra that could in 2014.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a little bit.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll wrap this up. Don't hang up though when we're done.
I won't. I'm here to stay.
Nice. Yeah. Huge thanks to Stick Shift Nation for hosting this podcast. Travis Foster for working his magic behind the scenes, And of course, you can find the Clutch Burners podcast on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. And get on over to stickracing.com and get yourself either Stick Shift Nation shirt, hat, or sticker, or of course, a Clutch Burners t-shirt. And you can look super cool. That's it.
I need one now. I'm gonna do that.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we're gonna sign out. We're gonna call it good. Thank you, Myles. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been super cool. So
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thanks. All right, done.